So thanks for Circle of Legends for hosting this interview. This interview gonna be about education and the future of education, and we're gonna interview Iman Sahota with background of education and sustainability. So Iman, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. And thank you for the Circle of Legends for having me today.
Yeah, that's good. So what's your education background?
Yeah, so I graduated last year from the University of Toronto doing a Bachelor's of Science. And during
Mhm.
my Bachelor of Science, I did a double major in Earth and Environmental Systems and Forest Biomaterial while doing a minor in Energy Environment. And I really chose to do that because I was really passionate about the environment.
Okay, cool. And what did you study, your major in the university?
Yeah, the reason I studied my majors in university was I was always interested in finding out how the world worked and how kind of systems are in tune with each other and seeing how our human impacts are in tune with the systems that we have. I was also very interested in studying bioenergy and seeing how we can use things like trees, wood chips, logs, chips in order to create energy and looking at things like biodiesel, bioethanol, and biogas. So I had a really, I was very, very interested in seeing how we can use the earth in a new way and finding out how the earth works. So combining that component of energy and using renewable resources and finding out more about bioenergy because I feel like before I even started school, I never really heard of bioenergy or even forestry in general. So when I got to school, I started learning a bit about earth systems and forest biomaterials, and I found it really interesting that we can replace plastics because plastics is such a huge problem with biomaterials and using like biomaterials in my opinion can be a very good way for the future in terms of innovation and change and impacting things like climate change, which is another reason I guess why I studied what I studied was to find out how us humans are impacting the environment and learning more about climate change.
Yeah, I agree. So, are you working related to what you study right now?
Yeah, so I'm working on a couple different projects right now. I began
Mhm.
in February working at a sustainability company in Leiden. And at Enlighten, I helped develop a new sustainability certification.
Mhm.
With our Enlighten certification, there's essentially there's essentially different certifications out there that look at filling out checkboxes. So you have this energy system, you have this water system, you have this light system and those are known as LEED and WELL. And
Mhm.
what we did was we took a very people-focused approach to sustainability, looking at how we actually impact people through our sustainability projects. And the unique thing about our certification was that we integrated surveys and we looked at things like productivity and efficiency increasement. And then we integrated that with artificial intelligence that measures the emotional impact of our sustainability projects. And with our emotional intelligence, what we're essentially able to do is study human emotions and how sentiments have changed throughout the work environment and seeing if it's really a sustainability problem or it's a people problem. So we're able to focus in on sustainability in a new way, integrating artificial intelligence.
This is really interesting.
Yeah, and then with what I'm working on now, what we're doing is we're creating a sustainability educational platform. And with our sustainability educational platform, we essentially have different programs that all promote sustainable educational values, whether that be building a sustainable self, whether that be showing the connection between yourself and nature. And
Mhm.
again, it's data driven. So with our data driven, we're utilizing the same artificial intelligence that we use for our certification, but we're integrating it with education. And really, what we've been trying to do is bring industry/engineering to education and combining that because it's education more than ever is going to be very important. Like, for example, I know that there was a study that when an earthquake hit Pakistan, they lost over $5 billion in educational value. So we feel like there's a huge need for education right now and providing a sustainable education tool that people will be interested in. And the really cool thing about our educational platform is that we have partners in Finland who are taking all our educational programs to the Finnish education level, sorry, because Finland has one of the best educations in the world, and essentially with our partners in Finland, his name is Paul. You can search him
Okay.
timerepaircorp.com. But with
Mhm.
Paul, he's been living in Finland for 10 years, studying the educational sector and helping us develop our programs and taking it to the educational standard of Finland. So it's a new culture that we're trying to push of sustainability and sustainable educational values.
This is really interesting. So, Amon, what personal challenges have you encountered in your education journey?
In my educational journey, I would say the biggest challenge that I faced was probably commuting from Brampton to downtown Toronto. I feel like that was a huge issue because I would sometimes get to classes very tired, or like I just wouldn't be able to focus. So that was a major problem for me. But it also gave me the tools to become disciplined in the future and utilize my time. So although that was an educational challenge for me, I took it more so as an experience on how to utilize my time better. Having to read on the train, maybe sleep on the train instead of sleeping at home. But I guess that was the biggest educational challenge for me was probably the part of commuting.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a couple of courses that I obviously had difficulty with. Calculus first year wasn't my strongest. I wish I knew Mr. Hush.
Yeah.
Uh, that was very difficult for me. But in terms of actually the education part, I feel like education shouldn't be something to stress about. It should be
Mm-hmm.
taken as a learning experience, and that's kind of how I always approached education and learning. It's although I may have all these tasks to do, I have to do them regardless, and I have to learn from those tasks, and I'm doing them for a reason. So I guess in terms of actual educational challenges, I took it all as a learning experience. So the challenges were really in getting there and making sure I was there on time.
I see. So, how hard was it? Like,
Well, yeah, I
okay.
guess I can go a bit deeper into like what my day would look like. It would take me about an hour to leave from. I would go to the GO station at first. It would take me about half an hour to get there, and then an hour to get from. Sorry, 40 minutes to get from Brampton to downtown, and then from downtown it would be another 20 minutes through the subway walking, and then repeating the same thing on the way back. But it's like if you miss a train, and then the next train's like an hour after. But anyways, yeah. But that was I would say that was like probably the biggest challenge was commuting and waiting and like the amount of time wasted. I guess commuting as well.
Okay, so, Evan, what, like, in your opinion, what current issues in educations are? Like,
I
what do you see at, like,
hmm.
from your point of view, what are our education issues today? This is better.
Yeah, that's a great question. I feel like the problems in education sometimes are the values get lost within
Mhm.
education. So I feel like sometimes or most of the time we're too focused on getting our grades and making sure we get into the schools and not being able to see the practical component of why we're learning things. And like the biggest issue for me within that is that like we all are saying, hey, like I want to go to Yale, I want to go to Harvard, I want to go to Stanford, but we're not saying, hey, I want to learn. I want to educate myself. I want to be able to be self-sufficient. And I feel like in the current school systems, something that we're missing is building the value of education, but also preparing people for the future outside of school. Because I feel like school and education right now are at two different levels because school is providing all that logical knowledge, but you also need to get that experience, which gives you education in order to build yourself for the future. So I feel like the values of education right now are not being really focused on, especially with COVID-19. It's even harder because people are focusing on, hey, like we just need to get through this parents essentially, like some parents, I guess, treat
Mhm.
schools as daycares instead of a place for their children to learn. And they're like, hey, like I can't wait for, COVID-19 to be over so my kids can just be at school full time taken care of and I don't need to be at home with them instead of trying to provide them the education that they require. And like that's a huge part of why the Finnish education model works is because they're so focused on the educational values and to integrate the parents, and schools aren't really just seen as a daycare. It's a part of education and it's about building the values. So I guess to answer your question, I guess the biggest thing I see lacking within education is supporting the values of education.
I totally agree with you. Um, where do you see education in next 5 years?
In the next 5 years, that's a great question because there's so many different things going on right now with COVID-19. Like, I feel like education is going to a more digital realm, and like people who didn't have access to education, or I guess education that they would normally have, will now have access to education because the digital platform of Zoom, of people just being able to communicate. So I feel like within the next 5 years, education will really be focused on online learning, number one. And I feel
Mhm.
like it'll be focused on much shorter courses. So instead of teaching calculus over the span of 6 months or whatever a semester is, it'll really be focused on short courses that focus in on the key points. And I feel like education is now going to involve more soft skills and building a person instead of just having the logical component, because everyone is seeing the importance of things like emotional and social health. Everyone's seeing the importance of mental health and how it impacts us with education. So I feel like there's a lot more movement going on towards digital learning and towards the
Mhm.
development of building a sustainable self and looking at emotional well-being, social well-being, mental health. And yeah, I feel like that's where education is going within the next 5 years.
Yeah. Okay, so a question just came into my mind. How education got impacted by COVID-19 from your point of view?
Yeah, I feel like COVID obviously took everyone by surprise, and there wasn't a lot of preparation for it, obviously, because you can't prepare for something like COVID-19.
Yeah.
But from before, you can see that, I guess you could say that before, like one huge impact is on the teachers. Like teachers, they are under a lot of stress and under a lot of pressure that they
Mhm.
weren't necessarily under before because they have to juggle number one online and in-person learning. So I would say COVID-19 really impacted teachers, but then it also has a trickle down effect because when the teachers are impacted, so are the principals because they want to try accommodating for their teachers. So I feel like before COVID, a lot of there was still a lot of tension between schools and I guess administrations, but I feel like right now it may have caused people to come together and try to just get through a crisis. So it changed, it changed literally everything, like the safety procedures, making sure we're socially distanced, right? We're wearing masks. It's a completely different learning environment for schools, and it completely changed the way students interact with each other as well because they have to, like, before, I know when I was in class when I was younger, like I can't even imagine being in high school right now, like being socially distant, wearing a mask, and like not being able to sit beside my friends and talk to them, because that's what school was all about for me growing up. Is it was all about that social interaction and obviously learning and doing my schoolwork. But like the real reason I looked forward to going to school was like seeing my friends. So I can only imagine how kids now feel that some of their friends are learning online and some of them are coming in class and they're not able to communicate with each other or build that relationship like before. So I feel like a huge part is like the teacher stress and like the students not being able to build those relationships and things like that.
Yeah, unfortunately, and hopefully this COVID like gets better. Um, can you tell us more about sustainable education? How
Yeah,
is it?
yeah. With our with what we're building with our sustainable education program, what we're essentially doing is we're focusing on number one, building our sustainable self, but
Mm-hmm.
showing how we relate to nature. So we have different programs such as emotional and social learning, where students build empathy, they become emotionally and socially aware, so that they're able to build the empathy for other students and people around them. And that just gets back to the Finland education model, where they focus on building those soft skills prior to doing anything within school. So building those soft skills first in order to build a sustainable self. And then we have the program of Zero to Civilization, which looks at how we have the building blocks of life and how we go from literally having nothing to civilization and showing how we live a sustainable life. And then we have a couple other different programs that people are still in the process of developing, such as the leadership program, showing how people how to become better leaders because we need sustainable leaders, of course, for the future. Talking about regenerative farming, how communities and poor areas can essentially become educated in order to pursue regenerative farming a part of their community. We have sustainable construction so that people are aware of how to build things in a sustainable way and using sustainable materials. We have a sustainable energy course that's going to be looking at different energy sources such as bioenergy, solar, wind, power, and talking about the benefits and why things are being implemented and how things are being implemented, but why they can't be implemented in other places. So looking at how different areas require different technologies and talking about how essentially because everywhere in the world is different, which is why we're taking a global approach. We have regional leaders from each country that are giving us the knowledge of the culture so that we can adapt our programs. So for our sustainable educational program, it's very dynamic. It's
Mm-hmm.
adapted to each area through our regional leaders and is data driven through artificial and emotional intelligence, as I was talking about before. And the really cool thing is we're beginning our pilots very soon within in India. And as we begin our pilots in India, we have the process of we have Mexico beginning in the process. We're starting to get it connected to a couple schools in Canada, United States. So it's really about building that global effort.
Okay, this is really interesting. Um, is there anything you want to add about your like major or your job or whatever you want to talk about or anything related to education or sustainability, whatever you want?
Yeah, I guess one thing I would add is like everyone who has been a part of building the sustainable education culture has like it's really a culture movement. It's more than just like it's bigger than myself, I would say. So like we have like the people that we have in Kenya that are
Mm-hmm.
going to be bringing this to the communities that they lived in, so that they can work towards building a sustainable life. Uh, the people that are supporting this in Mexico that are they want to give renewable energy. Like they have the biggest oil fields in their country, but they're one of the poorest states. So like, how are they not being able to be sustainable themselves, even though they have all these resources? So I guess like the biggest thing that I want to give the message to is like this is much bigger than myself. There's people that like are going through things that need education, and
Mm-hmm.
really the biggest problem is not technology at all because all the technology is accessible, but it's education that is lacking and building those educational values. So I guess the biggest message I want to give at the end of this is that this is bigger than me, it's bigger than anyone that's a part of what we're working on, and it's towards achieving a sustainable culture.
Okay, thank you for coming and talking, and thanks again for the Circle of Legends. And it was great to talk to you.
All right, thank you so much, Prina. You're a great host, and thank you to Circle Legends again for having me. All right, bye everyone.